Okay, now we're going to be discussing one of our skills, which is inference with purpose. Okay, in other words, there should be an acronym that pops right up to your head, and that is AWACO. Okay, when we talk about inference with purpose, there are a few types of questions. Typically, an inference with purpose question starts with the word why. Okay, why was this source published? Why did the cartoonist publish this source? Why was this poster published in 1932? If it is not why, sometimes we will change it to what is the purpose, what is the intention of this source, which is very clear. In all of these cases, you have to use AWACO. Okay, of course, if the question asks you specifically for example, a time period, then you may have to use some of your contextual knowledge, or you can refer to other sources in the source-based case study paper to see whether you know what exactly is going on in 1932. Okay, so let's first go through our AWACO. Okay, by now you should know this by heart already. Okay, author, word, audience, context, and outcome. When we say word, we refer to action words, for example, convince, justify, inform, warn, influence, mock, and persuade. When we want to write our outcome, I must see the keywords so that. Okay, if you want to say source A was published so that, it's fine. If you want to say this is so that, it's also fine. But I must see these words, because if you don't have it, you're going to go off tangent. Okay, so let's try the first AWACO. What I want you to do is to look at this picture. Okay, don't look at my answers in the coming up part. Take a minute, pause this video, and go and try AWACO on this picture. I've already given you the question, and I have given you the provenance. Let me briefly bring you through this picture so that it might help you in writing your AWACO answer. The question here is, why was this source published? So we always start with answering the question. Let's imagine that this is source A. Okay, so source A was published. First thing we have to do is give our author. Is there an author in this source? Yes, it's a Soviet propaganda, so we know that it's by a Soviet. Okay, and then word we skip first. Okay, we don't do word first. Let's look at our audience. Who do you think our audience are? These are peasants celebrating at a collectivized farm. So we have our audience, which is pretty clear. This is going to be our peasants. And what is it showing? What is the context of this message? We know that it's a collectivized farm. So what is it that this particular image is trying to say about collectivization? Okay, this particular image is trying to say that collectivization is successful, because you can see a lot of people happily, you can see a lot of peasants happily eating their food, and they are celebrating the products of the collectivized farm. So now, how do we put this into words? Okay, I hope you've tried it out yourself. Let's go through the answer. Okay, why was this source published? I wanted to write it out sentence by sentence, but I figured that this might be easier for you to see it as a whole. Okay, source A was published by the Soviets, our author, to our word, convince the peasants that collectivization has been successful. So what I've done is establish the overarching message of the entire source. Source A shows many peasants enjoying the food that has been grown or produced out of collectivization. I have given my evidence to support my context. You cannot just give evidence, you have to explain your evidence. So what I did was to start with, this suggests that collectivization has been successful in increasing the production of crops. So, source A was published so that the peasants will continue to support Stalin's rule and his plans of collectivization. Okay, when we talk about outcome, the difference between outcome and context is this. Context is, what does the image want to make you believe? Okay, it's an action, it's a very passive action. But the outcome is, what do I want in return from you? So what do I want the peasants to do for me? In this case, I want the peasants to support my plans of collectivization, or Stalin's plans of collectivization. Okay, take a minute, look at this. I'm not saying this is the best answer, but this is a very simple AWACO framework that we are using. All good? Okay, let's try the second one now. Okay, why was this painting drawn? Again, try it out on your own first. Take a minute, pause the video, and go and try. Okay, good job for those of you who have tried. Now, why was this painting drawn? Let's look at the painting first, okay? It's a Soviet painting, so we know the author very clearly. If there's an author, there's a very high chance that there's going to be a purpose. So it's by a Soviet. It's showing a kolkhoz bar. A kolkhoz bar, remember, a kolkhoz is a collective farm, right? So it's a kolkhoz, it's a collective farm bazaar in 1934. At the forefront, there is a woman carrying a basket full of food and a bunch of flowers. Next to her is a stall displaying different kinds of fruits and vegetables. So we know that it's a collective farm bazaar. We know that it's by a Soviet. We know that the audience is most likely who? The people living in the Soviet Union, right? The people living, I hope you can see that, okay? The people living in the Soviet Union. And what is the overarching context of this source? If I would put it very simply, the overarching context of this source is that collectivization has been successful. Why? Because you can see a lot of food being produced and everyone looks rather pleased with it. And considering that there is even a bazaar, it tells you that the farmers are actually, or rather collectivization has been successful because there's an increase in efficiency of farming and therefore increase in production of crops. Okay, so let's try this out in answer format. Why was this painting drawn? We always start with answering the question. Source A was drawn by a Soviet to convince people in the Soviet Union that collectivization has been successful. Source A shows a woman carrying a basket full of food, not just some, but a basket full of food, and is surrounded by many different types of fruits and vegetables being sold by stall owners at the Caucasus Bazaar. This suggests that I am explaining my evidence. Okay, this suggests that collectivization has been successful in increasing the production of crops and providing food to the population. Source A was published so that the people in the Soviet Union would continue to support Stalin's rule and his collectivization policy. That is our outcome. So this is how our entire AWACO looks like. You have to substantiate it with evidence and you have to substantiate it with the explanation of evidence. Okay, if I change the question slightly, I change it to why was this painting drawn in 1934, in which I give you a very specific context. You're supposed to be able to either use your contextual knowledge or refer to the other sources of the background information to try and answer it. Okay, it doesn't change very much. If you realize, look at this paragraph, it's more or less the same. Except that the outcome here is different, okay? Source A was published so that people in the Soviet Union will continue to support Stalin's rule and collectivization plans despite the Great Famine that took place in 1934. So you can actually rephrase this paragraph to make it even better. But what I've done is to show you that what Stalin wants from them is support, and he is trying to emphasize that regardless of the Great Famine, collectivization has still been successful. Okay, maybe he is even trying to manipulate the people living in the Soviet Union into believing that collectivization has been successful. With that, we have come to the end of our AWACO. Okay, this is just a recap of the words you need to know. With that, that is all.